Morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, should I say. Backed by popular demand, Don Aers, the second talk of the day. Don, Technical Director from PASMA and the Ladder Association, and Don's talk today is guidance for ladders and steps, and I wish I could follow on with the same pronunciation, but I'll just finish on and saying simples. Don.
Good afternoon, everyone. My word. So many people in one of these theatres. I'm not used to it. Can I ask a question? Does anyone here have responsibilities for steps and ladders, or people who use steps and ladders? If you'd like to raise your hand. Thank you. Does anyone here train people on using steps and ladders? Some more. Wonderful. Has anyone here got tired feet and is enjoying a little sit down? Just so I can spot you. Thank you. Welcome to the AIF Theatre. The Ladder Association, formerly the BLMA, has been delivering the message about safe use of step ladders and ladders for 50 years. And I'd like to talk to you today about the new HSE guidance to the use of steps and step ladders. Some of you will have seen the previous guidance in various forms, and I'll be talking about that. But there is some new guidance which will be published very shortly. I'd like to point out that the furry gentleman on the slide has nothing to do with the HSE. He was here merely as a drawer to get you in. If you're expecting to walk away with a free meerkat, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Sorry about that. But we're talking about something about this new guidance, and basically the new guidance is simples. That's the end of the meerkat story. Today in this theatre in Birmingham, the National Exhibition Centre, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, I'd like to reveal to you the new HSE guidance, Safe Use of Ladders and Step Ladders, a brief guide. You were all amazed by INDG 402, that well-known document, Safe Use of Ladders and Step Ladders. You were all wowed by 405, Top Tips for Step Ladders. Will now be prepared for the sheer brilliance of INDG 455, Safe Use of Ladders and Step Ladders. Why is it so brilliant? Because it's simples. It cuts through the jargon, it cuts out the mystery, it makes things clear, and it clarifies the confused. And hopefully, it should stop me getting phone calls from people who are not quite sure about what they should be doing. It's been drafted by the HSE in consultation with stakeholders, including the Ladder Association. Ladders and step ladders can be a sensible and practical option for low-risk, short-duration tasks, although they shouldn't automatically be your first choice. That's the new guidance. Ladders and step ladders can be a sensible and practical option for low-risk, short-duration tasks, although they shouldn't automatically be your first choice. It's the whole case wrapped up in a single sentence. Shakespeare couldn't have done better. Ladders are not banned. They are not the devil's work, and they are not a smoking gun. And that is something that the new guidance tries to point out quite explicitly. It's a whole lot more positive in its approach to the use of ladders, and that's very important, because this is an important, everyday piece of work at height equipment. But please do remember that ladders are only suitable for low-risk, short-duration tasks, and as it says in the guidance, they shouldn't automatically be your first choice. The guidance says make sure you use the right type of ladder and you know how to use it safely. And how do you know how to use it safely? Well, I'd suggest you the only way to find out, and the only way you can prove it, is possibly to be properly trained. one of the things that you're going to notice in the new guidance is that the information is in a more logical order for the reader. The introduction tells you that the key messages that you need to be thinking about, and if it's right to use a ladder, and making sure that it's the right ladder and that you know how to use it. And these are the points that you'll need to consider in your risk assessment, which you must carry out as a requirement under the work at height regulations. So, I said it was in a logical order, and that carries on because the first thing you should do, once you've decided if a ladder is the right piece of equipment, is to check it. And what we're talking about here is our pre-use checks. They're carried out by a competent person who's going to use the ladder prior to starting work. It's done once a day before he starts work. They're also carried out if anything that's happened to the ladder, anything that might have happened to the ladder. The example that's given is if it's been dropped, possibly removed gently from the roof of the van or something like that, but something that may have affected its safety. So you carry out the pre-use check again. It's a simple check on the stiles of the ladder, that's the sides, the rungs on leaning ladders or the treads on step ladders, the feet, any locking bars or side restraints, and a check on the platforms. Remember that pre-use checks are not the same as inspections. Pre-use checks are not recorded, unlike inspections, and the inspections are a requirement of the work at height regulations. Inspections are carried out by a competent person at appropriate intervals, and the results must be documented. It's not possible to actually say how often you should carry out an inspection because that depends how frequently the ladder's used and the conditions that it's used in. But as a guidance, the Ladder Association recommends that ladders that are subject to frequent use, say on a daily basis, they should be inspected at least once every 3 months. Ladders that are subjected to use, let's say occasionally, on a weekly basis, they should be inspected at least every 6 months. And ladders that are subjected to infrequent use, periods in excess of monthly, they should be inspected at least once every 12 months. And those checks are also to make sure if the ladders are in storage, even if the ladder's not been used in that 12-month period, you should still be thinking about carrying out a check because it may have deteriorated while it's in storage if it's not been looked after properly. So you should still be checking it. There is a specific Ladder Association training course which covers that formal recorded inspection. Back to the guidance. Following a risk assessment that has shown it's right to use a ladder and following your pre-use check, we can now get on with the task, making sure that we're going to use the ladder or step ladder safely in accordance with any measures that we identified in the risk assessment. I don't want to go through all the points in the new guidance, but I'd like to remind you about some of the key issues and to highlight some of the changes where the guidance has been simplified and clarified. For example, in the last point on the slide, don't overload the ladder. Never use a Class 3 domestic ladder in the workplace. They're not designed for it. They're designed for infrequent use, and they have a maximum duty rating of 95 kilos. 95 kilos in old money is probably a bit less than I weigh. So some of you here who've got domestic ladders at home and who may not be, or maybe of a similar stature to some people, myself included, you might want to think about whether that's actually the appropriate ladder you should have at home. If you're going to hang up those heavy velvet curtains, you will need to think about it. EN 131 ladders, they have a maximum static load of 150 kilograms. Now that's not the same as their maximum working load. A maximum static load is a number that you test in a laboratory. Actually, an EN 131 ladder has a maximum working load of 115 kilos. Now, I know it says 150 on the side, but that's not actually its maximum working load. That's its maximum static load. If you're not sure about that, come and see me afterwards and I'll explain some more. And a Class 1 ladder has a duty rating, so that's its maximum working load, of 130 kilos. I told you that, well, the new guidance is green, and so are the people in it, the ones that are doing good things. This clever chap gets a green tick because he's positioned the ladder at the correct angle, which is 75 degrees, or 1 out for 4 up. Don't be tempted ever to position a ladder at a shallower angle because you feel safer, because actually you're not. You're far from safe. And that's for two very good reasons. Reason one is it's not designed to be used at shallower angles. They're not bridges. If you use it at a lesser angle, there's a chance it may bend. And if it bends, it may break. So it's 75 degrees, or 1 out for 4 up. Second good reason why you shouldn't use a ladder at a shallower angle is the feet aren't designed for it. They're actually specifically designed on most ladders to work at 75 degrees. If you use the ladder at 45 degrees, the chances are you'll be resting on part of the foot that isn't actually designed to be on the ground. So it may not work and the ladder may slip. So it's very important you set the ladder up at the correct angle. Well, we said that all the good people are in the diagram, in the new guidance, are in green, and that means that all the naughty people are in red, sort of orangey actually in this one. But the new guidance clarifies that for leaning ladders, you need to maintain 3 points of contact. Specifically, it confirms that for a leaning ladder, this means a hand and 2 feet. It actually tells you that now. So it's not for a leaning ladder, it's not a chest, it's not the knees, forehead, groin, or any other part of your body. It's a hand and 2 feet, and it says that specifically. And it specifically points out that wherever possible, you need to maintain those 3 points of contact at the working position. Note that wherever possible, you need to maintain 3 points of contact at the working position. In previous guidance for ladder use, the possibility of not being able to maintain a handhold was mentioned, and it was specified that it was possible for a brief period of time. So I'd like £1 for every time I've had a phone call. What is a brief period of time? It's recognised that for some tasks involving leaning ladders, there will be brief periods of time where you need both hands for the job. And in the new guidance, whilst it was still not possible to define exactly a brief period of time, you know, whether it was 1.52 seconds or whether it was 1.26 seconds, it now contains an example which might be considered as a brief period. And the example is the time it takes to hold a nail while starting to knock it in or starting a screw. That's in the guidance, and that's their definition of a brief period of time. So that's the time where on a leaning ladder you might not have that handhold. The point is that you can use both hands, if necessary, to do brief tasks. But I'd point out to you that you still need to always have that handhold available. And if you can't do that, if you're doing tasks that take longer than a brief period of time, then you'll need to take other measures. That could be the use of fall protection or other practical measures that you can take. Remember, you should have considered all this in your risk assessment. It's no good doing that once you're up the ladder. You need to do it before you start work. The guidance on step ladders has also changed. It's more specific and it's simpler and it's clearer on the subject. Most step ladders are generally less stable when working side on. If you look at their geometry, it's fairly obvious. They're narrow and long. But sometimes it's not possible to work face on to the task. And it gives an example of a stockroom where you might be between two racks of shelves and you can't actually position the ladder face on. So in that case, it does say that there is the possibility of working side on, but you need to take certain measures in that case. You need to avoid side loading. For instance, you wouldn't do anything where you were drilling through walls or bricks or concrete. And if you couldn't do that, you'd need to tie the ladder to make sure it couldn't overturn. One thing you don't do when we're talking about tying a ladder, a cup hook and a piece of garden string into the wall, that is not considered tying the ladder. And when you're deciding if it's safe to carry out a particular task on a step ladder, you need to consider certain things. And again, there's a new example where you cannot maintain a handhold, and the example is to put a box on a shelf to hang wallpaper, install a smoke detector, things like that. And again, you need to do that risk assessment. Here's an example of one of the changes. The red labels on there, by the way, they're not in the new guidance. They're there for me. I've put them onto the slide. But it does now say, and it gives this example, where two hands need to be free for a brief period for light work, keep both feet on the same step, and the body, knees or chest supported by the step ladder to maintain 3 points of contact. That's vital. So it now tells you that you can consider those as points of contact, but that's only for a step ladder, not for a leaning ladder. And again, you have to make sure that a handhold is available. It clarifies the point about which steps you shouldn't stand on. And basically, it's the top 3 steps. It might include the top cap. So if you count down 3 bits from the top, those are the ones you shouldn't stand on. So it's the top 3 counting down from the top. It tells you more about securing a ladder and how you should secure it. And remember that there are certain alternatives. Footing a ladder is absolutely the last resort. And in fact, if you have to foot a ladder, I suggest you might need to think about whether it's right to use a ladder for the job. Tying in is the safest method. If you can't tie it in, you can consider stability devices, but be very careful. It has to be an effective stability device, and I have to say there's not many of those. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope that's given you some information. It's a very detailed document, but it's very clear and it is very simple. If you'd like to talk to me more about it afterwards, I'll be pleased to come if you'd like to come to the back, and I'll see you there. Thank you very much for coming. Is there anyone who has any questions now, or? No? Well, one question over here. Thank you, sir.
When does the new document come out from the HSE?
It's at the printers, I'm told. So it
could
should be
a couple of
imminent.
months. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much indeed.
See, was it interesting to you? Why did you?
Very, very informative. It was good.
Yeah. What were you looking for when you came?
Just a general overview of what the new regs were saying, the new information, and it's very simple.